All right, everybody, this video is how to make the secret box that is included in your July 2022 box of making. As you can see, it's a really cool iris box project. So you'll be able to open and close your iris, have a really fun box you can put all kinds of things in. But what makes it the secret box is this really fun corner right here, where I've actually managed to make a little hidden compartment for you to put anything in you want. And as long as you pick the panel you want to put your piece on, then you'll be able to do that. You'll also notice that we've got all 4 phases of the moon and the 4 seasons of the tree of life in our secret box as well. So let's learn how to make this, shall we? All right, now that you know what we're making, let's take a look at the parts you'll need and what you need to do to prepare them. First, there are these 4 parts that were loose in your box. And the first of those is this ring. This is going to be your handle to open and close the iris. That'll go on top. And then we have our box bottom. That's this nice big solid piece. And for the box top, we're actually going to have 2 pieces. This is going to make it much, much easier to assemble. We've got this ring. Be a little gentle with it as you sand it and prepare it. And this is going to sit on top of it like so in our box. Now, when we do these instructions, I try to always tell you what's going to be visible from the outside. This is going to sit on top here, and we're going to have boxes going up. So when the iris is open, you'll be able to see the bottom of the box. You shouldn't be able to see underneath at all, but you may want to prepare it, make it smooth at the very least so that things are smooth. And then make sure you sand both the top and the bottom of this piece so that this can rotate smoothly on your box. And now we're going to open the bag and talk about what's in the bag. So you'll notice we've done a separate little bag here with some little parts in it. I'm going to go ahead and open this because you will want to prepare them and decorate them as you go. This is the part that makes the box the secret box. And these are going to get stacked like so. Presumably you're going to want the pretty part out here so that when the inside of the box, actually I don't know which way you'll want to do it. You can see the pretty part, but you're going to glue all of that together. So sanding is really hard on these small pieces without breaking them. You don't necessarily need to go to this thickness, but it felt to me like this is about 1 inch thick, and it gives you enough room to store all kinds of fun hidden things in it. So we're going to do that like so, and you can decide how you want to decorate and how much sanding you want to do on that. These are the pieces, these little called ghosts, are the pieces that are going to make up your iris themselves. So you'll definitely want to decorate them and sand them however you want. The way the iris itself goes together is with this big piece here. So this is going to go underneath, like so. And these pieces are going to get attached on. I'll play with the alignment when we're ready to build it. Approximately like so all the way around. So you can see you're going to have a pretty decent view of them as you go through the box. And then we're going to set this other ring on top. From a decorating perspective, you are going to want to decorate those and the top however you want it to look. So that gives us those pieces. Now, what else you've got in your bag is 4 of these and 4 loops that are going to go just directly behind them and screw them on. So those will need most of your decorating time, and you'll decide how you want to decorate those. And then we've got some other pieces in our bag to take a look at. These are the sides of the box, so you're probably going to want to make sure that you sand and decorate them. The inside piece is going to be on the inside of your box, so it's not going to have very much visibility at all. Be very, very gentle. These are called living hinges. As you notice, they bend really nice, and if you were to bend them all the way tight, you would probably break them, and then you would call us, and we would be more than happy to get you another one. And finally, you should have one that's a little circle like this, and one that's a little circle with jut outs on it. This is going to form our bayonet lock to lock in the side, so we're going to glue all of this together, and then we're going to attach that centered onto one of these like so. As we build our box together. So we'll decide which one of those go on, and we'll put the pieces in the correct orientation to make that all work. So now that you've seen the parts, go away, go decorate, have fun. Make sure you prepare it all carefully. I'm going to go sand all these pieces as well so that they look good when we're done. And then come back and watch the remainder of the video. Now that you've got all of your parts decorated, I've sorted mine out a little bit here, as you can see. We're going to build this in pieces. And the first piece we're going to build is our bayonet lock for our secret box and our secret box itself, just so we have those parts ready when we're doing our assembly. And what you'll notice is I've taken the two pieces that have the holes in them on our sides, and notice that one side has a 1/4 inch brick wall and the other one only has an 1/8. So we're going to build this such that your bayonet lock can slide into the hole. We're going to sandwich this little 1/8 of an inch piece of paper between the bayonet lock itself and one of the spacers that goes above it. And finally, we're going to put this on top. Now, the question is, what angle do you want this to be, and how are you going to line it up? And I'm going to show you that trick, because what happens is we're going to set our bayonet lock into the piece, into the door this way, once it's all glued together. And then we're going to rotate it an 1/8 of a turn, a 1/4 of a turn. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we take this, and if we're going to go straight, we want to make sure we align it up this way when we do it. But we're going to start with getting these pieces on the edges aligned. So I'm going to slide those apart. And we'll get these two pieces going first, making sure that everything is good. And notice everything fits nicely, but they aren't perfectly the same size, so I'm going to put my glue on this edge, and then I'm going to glue it down. The trick when gluing is always to put glue on the smaller piece first. And I've made this just a hair smaller than the other one to make sure everything spins smoothly. And I'm going to look at it from the top and try and keep it as aligned as I can. I can't use my fingers to align it. I just need to get it nice and aligned. All right, now what my little piece of paper is here for is to give me a little extra thickness so that I have enough room to actually spin this when we put it together. So I'm going to go ahead and put my glue on here. Like so. And we'll stick that down right there. Now, if you're using wood glue to do all of this, you just need enough thickness to give yourself a little bit more thick than this wood. Which is why I'm using the cardstock here. Depending on how much you've sanded the pieces, you may decide that you actually want to do one more layer of sanding. Lots of options for you. And now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my hardware bag. And in my bag of hardware, I have 1/2 inch screws and I have some 1/4 inch screws. And the reason for the 1/4 inch screws is tricky. I'm going to pretend that this piece is exactly like all the other pieces that we're actually going to use to screw the box together. So we're going to glue it together And then we're going to put these 1/4" screws in and glue those in as well. So what you need to decide is which season of tree is going to be your hidden side. And I think I am going to make it be the spring one, which is the one I had out here earlier. So I want to glue these together, but I do want to make sure that I line it up when I do. So I'm going to put a couple screws in here and drop them into the holes to make sure that those two edges get aligned properly. Now remember, we want it to sit this way when we're done. So we want to put it in this direction, and then we want to rotate it to vertical. So the easiest way to do that and get that aligned properly is to use those screw holes on this side as my alignment points. So what I'm going to do to make this easier for me is I'm going to use some of my 1/2" screws. I haven't done this before, so you'll have to see if this works well or not. But I'm going to take some of my 1/2" screws here and hold on to them and flip it over. And you'll notice now that those screws give me an alignment point that I can say, okay, I know I'm exactly where I want to be if I were centered on those. And then I could just lift this up and drop those out, and I'd be exactly centered where I want to be. So I think that's going to work great as a way to align it. If you've got great eyes and you are an expert and you don't need to use the screws, that's even better. But my experience says anything I can do to help with alignment is good. So I'm going to take those. And I'm going to get them lined up right on these screw heads like so. And as I gently lift up, maybe not, I'll slide those down a little bit. I can see where my alignment needs to be perfectly, right coming out right above those. And then I can flip it over and tighten it all nicely. Don't let it slide because, of course, then you wouldn't be aligned the same way. So now you can put it in here at an angle, like so, and then once it's in the box, you'll be able to rotate it around those pieces and line it up. So that's part number 1 to assemble. Get those out of our way now, and pull those two sides back. And now we're going to assemble, I guess we'll do the secret box number 2. Get that out of our way so it's ready when we're ready to assemble this. And the easiest way to do these is going to be just to do one at a time. A nice layer of glue all the way around the piece. And this is when you get your fingers dirty with glue. I know you know that. If you haven't figured it out yet, you will soon. But you can use your extra paper towel that I'm sure you have sitting nearby to wipe off the extra glue. And then I got a bunch of glue in the middle on this one. So I'm going to wipe off some of that extra glue from the middle as well. And now I can just continue to go around my box. Now, be a little careful here to keep the alignment right. I think this is the right place in the process to do it, but you could just as easily wait till the very end and assemble it just before you put your iris on your box. in the spirit of build your own story. Okay. Definitely need a musical track for this background. This is the boring part of making one of these. Hopefully you're having fun doing it. Getting your fingers covered with glue. And one more, unless you want it to be smaller. One final piece, all nice and lined up. By the way, if you haven't glued them all together yet, you will notice that there is a trick you can use to turning them on to the side to help with alignment. And I'm going to, again, wipe the sides, make sure nothing is coming out the sides and ruining my sides of my secret box. And you'll also notice that the bayonet lock is small enough to sit inside that, which is perfect. Okay. I'm going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and build the iris. All right, I'm back. Breaks are always good. Hopefully you got a break, got a drink of water. Now this is the tricky part, because here's what we need to do when we build this. We're actually going to put this on the bottom. We're going to put this in next. We're going to put our little ghosts in. And then we're going to put this on the top. So the question you might be asking is, how do I manage to get all of that lined up right without causing a problem? And I'm going to do one of the patented Steamy Tech tricks here, which is I'm going to put all of these in from the back side. See if I can manage to hold on to all of them as I flip them over. I make no promises, and I'm going to set it up this way. And the reason I'm going to do that is because it's way easier to get these guys aligned on their screws than it is anything else. So I'm just going to put them on their screws. And the reason there's etching on the bottom here is you can see approximately where they need to go. So those lines are going to mimic the ones that we're going to put on when we put the top on. But it really helps when it comes to aligning things to have those lines at the bottom. So I put my ghosts in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ghosts that make up my iris. And now I'm going to take the box top and give myself a little space around all the sides of it. And I'm going to see if I can figure out what holes it aligns on. So notice that my box top is now aligned to those holes. If you try setting them in the holes, which I'm betting some of you did, it's a little tricky to get them all lined up. But now that I've done that, it's pretty easy to do this next step because I now have my alignment on the top, and I can just do this. Now you've got two choices. Well, you've got lots of choices here. The first choice is you could just put a little glue on these and make the screw and the nuts be on the top of your piece, but I think that's ugly. So I want the nuts on the bottom. But first I'm going to put this on loosely so it'll spin still. And then you'll notice we can open and close it nicely. Now because it's loose, it has room for this piece on the bottom to come in and out and slide around, and it's a little bit problematic, but it's going pretty nicely for me here. So I want to flip these over as I go, and I intentionally put the nuts on, and I'm intentionally going to flip them over. And the goal, one at a time here, and my goal is to make sure I've got a nice, smooth moving iris before I move on. Now, we're going to give this some support so this top lid isn't so foofy when we assemble it into the box, but we still want to make sure it's all nice and smooth and all working properly. So this step is flip them over, and then I'm going to glue the screws on. If you have Loctite, I would recommend using Loctite for this step, so that if you had a real problem, you could get in and take it apart. But Loctite is certainly not a requirement, and you know, the challenge is how tight is too tight. And as always, we will practice doing this. Now, if you're a new subscriber or you're new to the box of making and you haven't watched the videos on basic techniques, we talk about gluing, we talk about gluing screws, we talk about how to be very, very careful with super glue, so make sure you've done all of that. And now I've got them all this way. And I can open and close my iris. So I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to use a hand underneath to hold it up. Since I'm going to glue these together, I want to make sure that I'm tight and I haven't dragged down a little bit. So I'm holding it up at an angle here. I don't want to give myself very much room at all. I want to make sure I've got enough room still to open and close. But I don't want to give it so much spring that it can cause a problem. So you want to be a little careful at this step, which is why I do suggest Loctite. So if for some reason you get too tight or you get too loose, you can take a screw out, use one of the spare screws from the spare screw kit, or use the spare screw from the spare screw kit, and give that a try. So I'm just going to go around my iris here real quick. As always, the other thing to be aware of with super glue when you're building one of these is you want to make sure that it doesn't stick the screw to the wood behind it, because if it does, then we won't be able to pivot, and that would be a problem. So one more screw, and my iris will be finished, and we'll let it sit for a minute to dry, and we'll build our box. I can't wait to see what you've done with decorating this and how you decide to use it. Now, I will show you one more thing that can happen with this iris that I've seen happen from time to time, is if somebody were to really push on it hard, I could push down through this wood and misalign a piece. And in that scenario, you should be able to gently walk to each of these separate teeth and get these pieces back where they need to be aligned properly so your iris will open and close, okay, without having to completely take it apart. But be careful with that one thing and don't let people push down on it too hard. And now is the time for box building and learning a little bit about living hinges. And you do have a couple of choices here as well. I'm going to put the ugly side up, And you can decide whether you want to glue it in or not. There should be enough pressure that it doesn't need to be glued in, and it'll still stay really well. I do think I'm going to put a piece on here. And then the other thing to be really careful of is you've got these 1/4" tabs and these 1/8" tabs, and you want to make sure your 1/8" tabs are on the bottom. And it is just a little tricky to actually assemble it. So I'm going to show you this as we do the first two sides, and then we'll move back to the middle part. So first I want to make these two attach together. Come on. Maybe I'm going to make those two attach together. Nice and tight. You might want a little bit of a rubber mallet or something to push them together, but you really do want them to be together solidly. And now I'm going to continue. And again, I want to make sure that my 1/4" side all stays together, so I'm going to put this side on. If you need parental assistance to get these pounded together, you can do that. You can use my patented hammer it with a screwdriver method. I'm sure this professor won't approve of that. Ha! A mallet randomly appears on the set. Think. A little gentle a little gentle persuasion never hurt anything, but do be gentle if you're doing this. And the last one, again, make sure you keep your 1/8" all the way up, because if you pound on it, it's in. Flip that over one more time. Go pound, pound, pound. All right. And I have my walls. So now I got to stick my walls in the top. And this is the part that's going to take a little bit of help. Sometimes two people doing it is easier. And I'm just going to slowly go around. And they should all fit nicely in the holes. Now the tricky part here is these corners want to shrink. So once you get a corner in, you're going to need to stretch enough so that it'll fit in the side, like so. And the same thing is true as you go beyond the corner. So way easier with two people. And this is why I said you have a choice in gluing it or not, because it sometimes makes sense for some of this stuff to see how much pressure you have first. And if you don't need the glue, then don't use the glue. It all goes to my motto: when all else fails, get a bigger hammer. Stretch this side. I made it loose enough that they'll all fit in the holes, but they do have to stretch, so it's a little tricky to get them all lined up and get them to stretch properly. There we go. Ta-da! It's a box. And it's really, really strongly together. So if you want to glue it, what you're going to do, what I would recommend doing, is just gluing right across on the inside of the box on these 4 edges. And I'm going to show you one extra tool I have in my toolbox that I use to help with this. So I'm just going to run this line of glue across here like this, which gives it just a little more strength. And then I'm going to use Insta-Set, and I'm just going to spritz a little Insta-Set right there on that wall. And we'll do the same thing on the other walls just to make sure everything is together nicely. Now we're going to, in addition to how tight those walls fit together, we're going to screw them together with our side pieces. So that's going to help us hold this whole box together as well. And now we've got additional supports for our box, and everything should be in place well. But I want to put the top on next, because that's actually going to stretch out these top pieces like they need to be and get everything in good position for that. So we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. We're just going to put them down on our edges. Notice that they'll go down way further than the last batch did, though, because we've got these 1/4-inch tops here, so we've got room for the extra piece. Slide them in. Be really gentle with this part. And again, you're going to have to stretch to make sure things go into the right places. Let me rotate this around so I've got a little bit of a better angle on it. But you're simply going to walk around the edge, sliding where you need to stretch it all out nicely and get it all nicely fitted together. And again, if you want to put a layer of glue in here, you can, just like we did on the last one, or you can put your layer of glue on before you put it together, but it's so strong. There are so many contact points in the wood, you really shouldn't need to. Come on, go down all the way. My corner just wants to be a little stubborn, but I'm all the way down. Make sure you can get rid of all the little spaces there so it's all nicely assembled. And now I'm ready to finish doing my box. And then the last thing we'll do is put our feet on and put the iris on top. So, since we decided we were going to make spring, summer, fall, winter, since we decided we're going to make spring our bayonet lock, you'll notice when I slip it into the hole here, it rotates and then comes up like that. And then it'll sit that way, and anybody just looking at the box would have no clue that that piece wasn't glued in. So I'm going to put summer on next, and all I'm going to do is use my screws and line these 2 pieces up. That's 1 drop. How many times can Lady Steam drop something while making a project? Your guess is as good as mine. And as I did before, I'm going to go ahead and put drops of glue on. Now this time I can make them as tight as I want them to go, and I probably want them to go tight so that nothing spills around. So if you've got your screwdriver handy, once you put your screw in, you can tighten those screws down using your screwdriver or by hand to make sure nothing goes anywhere. So spring's in the middle, summer's next to it. And we'll do that next. Sometimes when you're doing glue on screws, it's also really easier to have to just get the nut to go in with the screw as well. Come on. I think I have a bad nut. Yet another reason to always have spare screws on hand. Either that or I've got a bad screw, which I may have. That one's got glue truly glooped on it, and it does not want to start. Like I said, getting the box together first helps with a bunch of other things. Because that gives you the strength now when you're assembling it to make all of this much easier. Now, by putting the glue in first on this one, what I did was manage to do the wrong thing, and I got glue to spoosh out on my top surface here. If you do that, you can just wipe it off very carefully. Hopefully you haven't done anything too bad in the process, so we'll go back to this way. Put a dot of glue on my screw. Now that my fingers are sticking together, and we'll do fall. That's the pretty birds for going away. Now, the reason we have this extra layer here is not because it's really required for the art, but because if we want to make our box have things disappear, then I needed that extra layer on the front for the bayonet. So it made it all easier to build from that perspective. If you're a new subscriber to the Box of Making, welcome. If you're coming back for volume 2, welcome back. However frequently you've decided to subscribe. We're really excited about upcoming projects for the Box of Making. The professor is smiling at me with his evil grin. If you're interested, you can sign up for Maker Night events in between, just to keep your maker juices going. Let's put these 2 screws in. We're getting very close to done here. See if I can do this without destroying another screw. Professor, I think I'm going to need 1.5 inch screw. Is that possible to arrive at? He takes such good care of me. You all need a Professor Steam in your life. That's the one that got oogity boogity glue on it. I don't want to use that one. The technical term is oogity boogity glue. Okay. Come on. You can line up. I know you can. And winter, our bear tree. The Tree of Life is one of my favorite bits of symbolism, so I really enjoyed putting that artwork on these pieces when I found it. It seemed a sign that that was the perfect artwork on this box. Thank you, sir. Ooh, he gave me 2. He's worried that I'm going to drop one. I've also clearly lost a nut somehow in my bag. Shocking. All right. I'll put some glue here. You should have 17 half-inch screws and 17 nuts in your bag when you start, and 4 little 1/4-inch screws. Oh, so close to done here. 1 more nut. Did I pick up the silly one again? And this just makes these sides look all the way the same as the first one, except that on the first one, we need to go back and put our 1/4-inch screws in. The easiest way to do that is just to take and do 4 little dots here. Dunk, 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 very carefully with your glue so as to not make a huge mess. Glue them in. Wipe off any excess glue that you got around the tops, because we don't want anybody to know that spring is a hidden compartment. And now we can go put our spring tree in just like that. And that's going to go perfectly. Now, the other thing we're going to do then is we need to fasten this box in so that you've got a hidden compartment here. And the way we're going to do that is simply with a little bit of glue. So you'll notice if it's on, the piece still sits in perfectly and spins perfectly. So all I need to do is put my ring of glue around the last piece on this box. Set this here. I'm pushing it down to the bottom to make sure I have as much space as possible on the top and doing my best to center it in the box. Now with the glue behind it, with the dark behind it, you can't really tell that it's any different than any of the other sides. Except you know. Dun, dun, dun. All right, 2 more steps. I'm going to go ahead and put the feet on next. And I didn't this time put little dots on the bottom for you. You don't have to use them, but we always like putting feet on things. You don't have to glue them on, but I recommend a little bit of glue. The super glue helps make sure that the sticky on these feet actually stays. And just like with all other things I've been doing today, I'm going to have to wipe off some excess from the bottom. because I smooshed out a little glue. And I'm going to flip it back over, and now we're going to finish it. So I'm just going to set this layer on top. Like I said, as always, you can choose if you want to glue it on, you can, but it should be fairly straightforward to squeeze it on now that we've got all the rest of the pieces in place. And I'm going to open it to do this. That gives me a little bit more flexibility. See how good I am. That corner is good, so I should be. Once I find a corner that'll go on, it will go on fine. It's getting those corners in, the alignment on the corners right. And by using leaving my hand inside, if I need to push out on a corner to get it in, I can. Or a wall a little bit to get it in, I can. And now it's down. And as I mentioned, this is the challenge of if you get those pieces, if any of your iris pieces slip out of alignment, that's what will happen. And so I push that back into alignment, and now it's closing all the way fine. And I'm sure that I'm not going to come loose on the bottom, and so I can go back and forth all day long on my iris in my very fun secret box. Thanks!